Madam Chair, can you hear me okay? This is Gary Skinner.
I can hear you, Gary. This is not the chairman. This is Sharon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I can hear you too, Gary.
Thank you.
I can hear you too, Gary.
And I can hear you too, Gary.
All right, one for Gary tonight. Good. It made my day.
Skinner, I can't hear you.
Well, get your hearing aids in, Bob.
I'll do my best.
There we go. Maybe it's better.
Everyone, while we are waiting for our chair and making sure that we have a quorum, I see that we have someone who's joined by phone. The last 4 digits are 5630. Can you please identify yourself so we know who's joined us?
That's me, Mike Ake with Keyless.
Oh, hi, Mike. Okay, thank you.
Sure, I get poor reception sometimes, so I use cell phone to listen.
We appreciate that. We had some difficulties last month with our audio, so we are very happy to know that you are doing everything you can to make this a smooth meeting.
Hey, Gary, I just feel like it wouldn't be appropriate if I didn't say, I hear you too. I heard all the, I hear you, Gary, so just thought I'd chime in. Oh, he's moved on me. He's gone. Darn, he didn't even hear me. Look at that.
Victor, we all know it's just that you can't help but talk, right? You got to be part of this.
I was walking past him, listening to the voice. I'm like, okay, it's time for me to come back. So thought I'd get in. How you doing, fam?
I'm doing well. How are you? Looks like you're well decorated for the holidays.
I am. I got the house, the trees, everything is done. I did it day after Thanksgiving. So I believe in this season, and we need it more this year than ever. So I'm 100% all on board with Christmas and the holiday spirit. All right.
Oh, tell me about it. Though I will tell you, I haven't had much of a chance to do too much, but
okay, I'm coming to your house. I'll help you put the decorations up. Okay.
I will take you up on that, my friend.
All right.
Do you need me to send you my address? I'll be here all day tomorrow.
Well, I'm gonna text you, and you're gonna tell me, and I'm coming over. I'm gonna help you. I'm 100% serious.
Well, I appreciate it. No, you're right. I think it's the time, and we talked about this as family at Thanksgiving. It definitely is a time when we all need to count our blessings. I can tell you with what I do on the non-elected side, it's pretty scary right now. The people who are losing family and friends due to this virus, it's way scary, way more than I had hoped we'd be at this point.
Yep. And look, you think I'm joking? I'm texting you right now.
All right, I'm gonna look at. You've made other promises, my friend. You haven't come through on.
I know, right? So this is my, I gotta get it right. I'm batting over 2 right now, so.
All right. Well, Mr. Angry, I'm going to show up at your house and put a steel monolith in your front yard.
They are everywhere, aren't they?
I hate to interrupt. I think
It is now 7 o'clock.
It is now 7 o'clock. I'm assuming Ms. Lookabill will be taking over for Christina tonight. Christine?
No, I'm here.
Oh, hello, Christine.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm
Good.
well. How are you?
Okay, I'm good. Supervisor Vega may or may not be in attendance. I guess. Oh, okay. I think I heard her.
Oh,
Thank you,
Did I hear
Madam
her?
Chair.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I will now call this meeting to order. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and related state of emergency, and as set forth in the Commission's Resolution 20-0501 from the May 7th, 2020 meeting, we are meeting remotely again this month. The public access is being provided by live streaming the meeting on PRTC's YouTube channel. This information was on PRTC's website, Facebook page, and at the Transit Center, as well as being advertised in Inside Nova and the Freelance Star. We will follow the same process as before. You'll state your name when speaking. I will introduce each item, then ask for a motion in a second. I'll repeat the names of who made the motion in a second, and then we'll ask each jurisdiction if there are any comments or questions, and then Christine will take the roll. And with that, we'll move into item 2, the invocation and pledge of allegiance. If we can first bow our heads for the invocation. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to convene once again. We thank you for such the responsibility that you bestowed on us in terms of leading our communities. We ask that particularly in this season of giving, that we're able to just stretch our arms out a little bit wider so that we can help those in need in our community. We ask that you just bless us during this meeting and give us the foresight and the understanding and the knowledge to really push forward things that are important to not only our commuters, but also our transportation workers, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
And now we will go to the Pledge of Allegiance, if we can stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic
for which
which
it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice
for
for
all.
all.
Thank you. We will now move into item 3, where Christine will call the roll.
Victor Angry,
Here.
Andrea Bailey,
Here.
Kenny Bodie, Margaret Franklin,
Present.
Janine Lawson,
Here.
Yesli Vega,
Here.
Ann Wheeler, Pete Canland, Maggie Hansford, Benny Smith.
Here.
Okay, because Mr. Bodie has not arrived yet, Benny Smith will serve as a voting member for Prince William County. Moving on, Tanisha Allen
Here.
and Cindy Shelton.
Here.
Meg Bumke, Gary Snellings, Pam Sebeski,
Here.
Ralph Smith.
Here.
Because Ms. Sebeski is here, Mr. Smith will be a non-voting alternate. Jeanette Rischel,
Here.
Preston Banks, Hector Sandejas, Donald Shoemaker, Matthew Kelly,
Here.
Jason Graham, Deborah Frazier,
Here.
Gary Skinner,
Here.
Tim McLaughlin, David Ross, Jennifer Mitchell, Jennifer DeBrule, Todd Horsley,
Here.
Steve Pittard, Lee Carter,
Here.
Elizabeth Guzman, George Barker.
Here.
Madam Chair, we do have a quorum.
Okay, we'll now move into item 4, approval of the agenda. Before we move into approval, I would like a motion to defer item 11.1, which is the acceptance of the audit report. We'd like to defer that to next month's meeting when we can have an actual presentation to the board presented.
So moved, Madam Chair, by Rischel from Manassas Park.
Second by Supervisor Vega.
Okay, I guess any discussion from Prince William County,
No.
Stafford County,
None.
City of Manassas,
None.
Manassas Park,
None.
Fredericksburg,
None.
Spotsylvania,
None.
DRPT,
No.
House of Delegates,
Nope.
and I believe that is it. Christine, will you call the roll?
Yes, and I'll make a note that Delegate Carter has joined us, so he'll be part of the roll call.
Okay.
Victor Angry,
And actually, Christine, if Mr. Baraka is available, I think he just wanted to make a note that we will still submit the financials to our state regulators because the findings won't change, but that we'll just be ready at the next meeting to have an actual presentation. So that just a word of note. I don't know if he's still here, but if we want to call the roll, they'll be fine now.
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Yesli Vega,
Aye.
Benny Smith,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen, Tanisha Allen, I didn't hear a vote.
Aye.
Cindy Shelton,
Aye.
Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Jeanette Richel,
yes,
Matthew Kelly,
Yes.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Yes.
Lee Carter,
Yes.
George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Okay, do we now need to move into approval of the entire agenda?
Madam Chair, I think probably it would be a good idea to do that, having
Okay.
disposed of just that one item.
Sure, so now we'll, if I can get a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve, Gary Skinner.
Second, Supervisor Bailey.
All right, Christine, will you call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Yesley Vega,
Aye.
Benny Smith,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Cindy Shelton,
Aye.
Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Jeanette Richel,
yes,
Matthew Kelly,
Yes.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Yes.
Lee Carter,
Aye.
and George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Okay, we'll now move into item 5, approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second, Pam Sabeski.
All right, are there any comments from Prince William County,
None.
Stafford County,
None.
City of Manassas,
No comments.
Manassas Park,
no comment,
Fredericksburg,
No comment.
Spotsylvania,
None.
DRPT,
No.
the House of Delegates.
None.
All right, Christine, will you please call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Yesley Vega,
Aye.
Benny Smith,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Cindy Shelton,
Aye.
Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Jeanette Richel,
yes,
Matthew Kelly,
Yes.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Yes.
Lee Carter,
Aye.
and George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair,
And Delegate Guzman is here, and I vote aye.
okay. Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Okay, great. We'll now move into item 6, the VRE Chief Executive Officer's time. There are also several authorizations that we need to make for VRE. What I would like to do is have Mr. Dalton give his presentation. We'll do questions, and then I would like to have a motion to accept items 6.2 through 6.6. And so with that, Mr. Dalton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Commission members and others. You do have the VRE update memo in your packet, so I'll just hit the highlights. VRE continues to operate at a reduced service level. Ridership is monitored daily, and additional cars and trains will be added to maintain social distancing. The public can view the capacity of each of our train as we've presented before via our train utilization webpage. We continue to manage and enhance the health and safety measures implemented system-wide. Earlier this year, for ridership in November, we hovered in the 1,300, mid 1,300 average daily ridership. We did because of the holiday have a couple of less operating days. Our on-time performance for the month of November was a little over 93% system-wide, and VRE staff continues to work remotely. All business functions are fully operational as we continue to maintain a continuity of operations. That's my report, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Questions?
Yeah, if there are any questions for the report, and then I'll also ask Rich if you can just give an overview of each of your action items, and then hopefully we can take a group vote. But for now, are there any questions from Prince William County with regards to the actual report?
No question.
Nope.
Stafford County,
None.
City of Manassas,
No questions.
Manassas Park,
None.
Fredericksburg,
None.
Spotsylvania,
No questions.
DRPT,
No questions.
General Assembly.
No questions.
Okay. Rich, would you like to explain each item before we get into the vote?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll just, I'll go in sequence, starting with 6.2. What we're seeking here is authorization for the commissions to accept and distribute VRE's FY 2020 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and associated information. And of course, these documents would be submitted to the public, different interested groups and firms. Just in summary, the audited financial statements have been completed, and the auditors have issued an unmodified opinion. Their opinion letter states that the VRE statements in all material respects fairly and accurately present the financial position of the organization. This opinion is the best outcome of a financial audit. You want to take questions now, Madam Chair, or just keep going? We'll take questions at the end.
Yeah, if you can go, and then we can take questions at the end.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 6.3, we're seeking authorization for the CEO to execute an agreement for the design, construction, operations, and maintenance of a parking garage at the VRE Manassas Park Station. Just in summary, I'll try to keep this brief, and of course we can answer any questions at the end. But there's with this agreement, there's 4 major components of the agreement. One of which being design, and we've worked very closely and in a very collaborative way with city staff on the design of this project. Partway through the design, the city requested that we change the location to a different site on land that the city had just acquired. So this agreement memorializes that commitment from the city to fund the necessary design work to accommodate the new site and return the design level to 60%. Just as a reminder, this project for the design level is funded by NVTA. And of course, then in the construction piece of this, the construction is funded through through an agreement, funding agreement with the I-66 outside the Beltway concessionaire funds. And so we've got, once we complete the design, we've got about $23.5 million for construction. And this agreement also does memorialize the fact that if there's additional funds that are needed for construction, that of course the city and VRE will work cooperatively to identify a source of additional funds, and or there is some language in the agreement that that since the city is working on an adjacent development, that that there may be an opportunity for some of that work to be done by the city's developer. The third component, the garage will be designed for approximately 675 spaces. About 544 of those spaces will be dedicated for VRE riders. The remaining 131 spaces will be dedicated for use by the city. And of course, the agreement does speak to a methodology to share costs proportionately for the maintenance, and that's similar to an arrangement we have for the City of Manassas parking garage. And then finally, there is a land conveyance component to this. This agreement also captures the fact that the previous expansion project that we conducted on the surface parking lot, we need to finish the conveying that property to the commissions. And then just finally, this agreement also describes a method in which we will work with the city staff on a ground lease for that property to construct the parking garage. And of course, that agreement will come back to the commissions at a later date. So that would be 6.3. 6.4, we're seeking authorization to execute a passenger rail operations and access agreement with the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. We'll spend a little time, maybe go to the next slide there. I believe has about one more slide there. There we go. Just in summary, there, as some of you recall, we did present as an information item at the last commission meeting that we had been working cooperatively with the DRPT staff and others on two agreements. One is an operating access agreement, and the other is a funding agreement, which we'll get to next. The operating access agreement, of course, is an agreement that will permit VRE to operate on what will soon be right-of-way owned by the Commonwealth. And this diagram or this map up in front of you kind of depicts that. If you basically the right-of-way in our service area will effectively split in half longitudinally. And so if you start at Spotsylvania and you follow the red line going up, and of course, just next to that is a black line that's meant to depict how this right-of-way essentially becomes split. So, so this agreement, it has multiple components to it. Let's go to the next slide. And so let me just touch on these major elements of the agreement. From an operations standpoint, initially let me back up for a second. The objective of this entire transforming rail in Virginia is to ultimately lead to passenger and freight rail separation. And of course, there's a series of planned improvements within this corridor before we get there. So even when we execute this, even as we execute the agreement with for access, the right-of-way will still be maintained and dispatched and operated by CSX. So this agreement does contemplate that. From a term perspective, this agreement is considered perpetual. The term will not end unless unless VRE ceases to operate. Track dispatching and maintenance fees, a little slightly different arrangement. We're used to paying access fees based on a train mile basis. This will behave more as essentially we will be billed by the rail authority for actual costs. So we anticipate that to be either at some point equal to or less than what we're currently paying, in this case, CSX for access. The passenger station facility lease arrangement, the agreement does capture essentially the stations that we do currently operate out of. There's some provisions in there. I'll give an example. Potomac Shores, we will be constructing a station, or we'll be collaborating with the developer for constructing a station at Potomac Shores. So there's provisions in there to add that station at a point in the future. The agreement also identifies planned improvements, and those are essentially additional third and in some cases fourth track, the Long Bridge, and the Franconia Springfield bypass. And of course, from those planned improvements come planned additional services. We do have, there's a tentative timeline, if you will, broke out in phases. So as the phased infrastructure improvements are completed, VRE will be in a position where we can add service. The agreement does also in that category, or on that topic, the agreement does contemplate though that in the event that that VRE isn't able to add service within a within an appropriate time, the rail authority will have the right to go use those slots for a period of time. VRE wouldn't lose those in perpetuity, but of course the goal of the Commonwealth is to make this investment, the broader investment, and be able to add additional service. So, but nonetheless, that would be something that's a little bit different than what's in our other access agreements. And then finally, the indemnity, liability, and of course, default provisions are similar to what we have in other access agreements. For those that are familiar with it, we will continue to use the insurance plan that's currently managed by the Department of Risk Management for the Commonwealth. It's essentially that same plan. Next slide. So this is 6.5. We're seeking authorization to execute agreement for passenger rail improvements. Or it's a funding agreement for passenger rail improvements, again, with the rail authority. If you want to go to the next slide. Next. Yeah, so at this point, I'm going to Mark Schofield, who's our Chief Financial Officer. He's been championing this agreement. So I'm gonna actually pass to him. He's got a quick summary on this agreement, and then I'll pick it back up and finish up the other items. Mr. Schofield.
Thank you, Rich, and good evening, Commission members. I want you to think of this commitment as to the Transforming Rail in Virginia program as happening over approximately a 30-year period, and it's going to be in two chunks. There's the first 10 years, and then there's the next 20 years. So during the first 10 years, all $15 million of our annual CROC money will go towards the Commonwealth and towards the program. Part of that will be debt service, and part of that will be a cash contribution to the planned projects. The debt service during that 10-year period may be as low as $7.5 million a year. It may be as high as $9.9 million a year, which is the statutory maximum. It all depends on ultimately how we structure the debt issuance. But what we are going to try to do is to maximize the proceeds that are available to contribute to the program, and specifically to contribute to the Commonwealth's purchase of the right-of-way. And then whatever does not go towards debt service during those first 10 years will go as a cash contribution or a pay-as-you-go contribution towards three in particular of the planned investments within the VRE service area. And those are the Long Bridge, the fourth track in Alexandria, and the Springfield bypass. So then after the 10 years is over, for years 11 and onward, debt service will continue, but will not be more than $7.5 million a year. The other half of our CROC, the other $7.5 million, will revert back to VRE and will be available for, again, whatever we decide is its best use. CROC can be used for operations, it can be used for capital, and of course it can be used as a backing for debt. In this period, it is very likely, of course, that we will use it to provide additional service. So that 10-year period was chosen on purpose. We expect that the Long Bridge will be available roughly 10 years from now, and that will open the door to a lot of that additional service that is being planned. We've been talking about an agreement like this with the Commonwealth for about a year now. We've had this basic structure in place of partially a debt commitment and partially cash from the beginning. The challenge has been how do we make a firm commitment while at the same time leaving as much flexibility as possible to be able to structure the debt issuance in an advantageous way, given what are essentially market conditions that we don't know what they're going to look like roughly a year from now. So that's really been the challenge, and we absolutely appreciate working with Director Mitchell and her staff on this. And I would say also, this is not the last time that this issue will come to the operations board and to the commissions. We expect to come back at least 2 more times with respect to this, to the agreement. One, we need to update our debt management policies. When we adopted those back in 2013, we did not contemplate a debt issuance like this. And then we will need to come back to get a formal approval on a detailed debt issuance plan once we have done the financial analysis that we need to do to determine exactly how we're going to do the issuance, have done the due diligence, all the legal work, all of that, all of those things. So you will over the next 12 months, you will be hearing about this more than once. And so with that, Rich, I will turn it back to you, and we would be happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I'll move on to 6.6. This is, we're requesting approval for the VRE's 2021 legislative agenda. And just quickly, you have it in your packet. There's an agenda at the state level, or at least topics at the state level, topics at the federal level. We have brought that previously to the commissions in the form of an information item. So it's simply, we're just seeking authorization to approve that legislative agenda. So unless I don't believe I'm missing anything, I think that that about wraps up those 5 items, Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any questions from Prince William County about any of those items?
Yes, Madam Chair, Supervisor Bailey.
Yes, ma'am.
Rich, thank you so much for the report. I just, no question really. I just wanted to get a better understanding, more clarity on the Potomac Shores piece. So let's schedule some time together if we can, as soon as possible, so that I can understand and lend support in that regard.
Yes, Supervisor Bailey, absolutely. I can give you some more detail on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Prince William County? Stafford County?
No questions.
City of Manassas?
No questions.
Manassas Park?
None.
Fredericksburg?
2 quick questions if I could.
Yes, sir.
The issue of the potential of giving up slots if we don't get them up and running within a certain period of time, especially when the state is a critical partner in making sure we do stay on time to get those slots and get the equipment to run those slots. I'm curious on how that came into the discussion. I mean, what was the thinking to bring in the possibility of even temporarily to take some of our, I mean, to me, when this was announced, that was the biggest deal. We finally got a commitment and a time frame on when we will get slots and how many we'll get, which is something we never had with CSX. So why suddenly is the state coming back? And I'm assuming this is a state initiative. We didn't do this. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Mr. Kelly, this is Rich. Your last point's correct. This is not something that that VRE asked for, of course. The rationale was simply, and again, from the state was, it's imperative that as we go through and make these infrastructure improvements, that of course that we do add the additional service from the planned additional service. And so this was the state's way to ensure that there is a mechanism within the agreement that, for example, if VRE, let's just say that as we get closer, and again, this is all keyed off of the planned infrastructure improvements. So let's just say that VRE we get closer to the completion of those planned infrastructure improvements on a phased approach, and for some reason, we just simply can't operate the service, that the state would have a way to fill those slots. And again, the agreement goes into, it's not a relatively long period of time. I think that they can go and fill those slots for a period not to exceed about 5 years. And then of course, VRE, if they're, within that 5 years or at that 5-year mark, if VRE is ready to add service, VRE service in those slots, and of course we get those back. So again, it's not in perpetuity, but this was explained to us as a way that the state can ensure that they could use those slots, and get some level of return on this major investment in the event that VRE can't operate that additional service.
Well, Rich, that gets back to the point, and if I'm incorrect in this assumption, please, and/or if DRPT wants to jump in, let me know. But a critical partner in making sure we can actually financially move forward with putting those slots online is going to be the people we're signing a contract with. 1, 2, CROC component, which is my second question. We talked about making a commitment of the 10 years and getting those investments in, and now we're looking at taking basically half, or at least half, and continually paying that into it. And Rich, my concern with CROC all the time, which was basically the state just took our gas tax money and redirected it. And that was originally a part of our plan moving forward to ensure that we can get our extra slots. So I'm a little concerned that on the one hand, one of our partners in making sure that VRE will expand as we all wish it to do so, and is basically, we are committing a vast amount of money to this project that is locally generated. And we had originally looked at and helping with our expansion plans is now committed elsewhere. Again, I keep coming back to why the push to suddenly potentially take our slots. Because again, this has been a big issue for us over the years when this came forward, because again, we're also competing in a sense with Amtrak as well as CSX on lines and stuff, passenger rail, what slots they get. And I'm just a little bit concerned why the state, whom is a critical partner for us in our expansion plans, is suddenly saying, oh, if you don't have it, which means they're not going to help us out when we need it, slots and use them somewhere else. Am I off on this?
Yeah, let me just see if I could do, I've taken, this was absolutely a discussion for us, with us in the, in the access agreement, primarily over many, many, many months. And it wasn't, I wouldn't say that it's been conveyed to us as being a non-committal commitment, if you will. But again, it's a backstop, at least at the state level, in the event, and again, we don't necessarily foresee it, but in the event that the VRE or the commissions don't want to operate the planned additional service. That's one element. Let me touch on the funding agreement and on that pay-go component, which is that half of the CROC amount that we talked about for 10 years. There is a provision in that funding agreement that basically says Okay, on the onset, we're going to use that $7.5 million as the pay-go component. But if VRE has another source to supplant that pay-go component, in other words, and as you know, Mr. Kelly, sometimes we get caught up in, we can only use certain funding sources for capital, can't use them for operating and stuff. So there is a sort of a backstop in that agreement such that if we have another source of capital funding that we can't use for operating, then we can supplant that $7.5 million, again, that projected $7.5 million of the CROC funds, continue that commitment, and then come back and use those CROC funds for operating funds.
All right, last question. Is there at any time throughout the life of this agreement the ability to have further discussions with the state as this moves forward? Because I don't disagree with you. If the board decides we don't want to run additional trains at this point for whatever reason, I can understand the state taking the slots and saying, well, we're going to use it for something else for a period of time. But again, if we really want those, then it comes up to an issue of funding. And part of the problem is because we can't get the funding lined up with our partner, the state, and then coming in and saying, okay, we're going to use it for Amtrak, or we're going to use it for whatever we're going to use it for. It just seems a little strange.
Understood. Let me go back and ask the other question you had. So again, I mentioned that the term of this agreement is essentially in perpetuity until some point in the future that the commissions cease BRE operations, if that ever happens. There's also provision, since again, the monetary term of this is actual cost, and there's a method in which we manage and audit that throughout the term of the agreement. But there's also a piece in there where we'll agree that we've agreed that we'll come back on or near that in 5-year increments or before 5-year increments, and sit down and see what those if there's any outstanding issues, things that we didn't contemplate at this point, initiating the agreement, or as things evolve, we need to be able to change. So yes, we can go back and do some different things in the agreement, again, starting with a conversation.
Madam Chair, I have no plans on not moving this project forward. Being around as long as I have, getting to this point has been, never thought this day would be happening, though I do have some concerns with it. And I would ask, Rich, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I would hope that our representative at DRPT can take this back to the state and maybe send out an explanation from the state on what their thinking is for this, so we have a better understanding of their position on it. And again, I don't want to put you on the spot for that, Rich. I want the state to respond to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, and we'll make sure to follow up with the DRPT on this issue. So thank you for raising that. Is there anyone from Spotsylvania that have any questions?
I do. This is Gary.
Yep.
Rich, so one of the things in the 10 years when it's built, how does north-south, south-north, we've always set in, I think in 2040 plan that we have, that we were hoping that we could get trains running out of DC in the morning rather than just going north on from Spotsylvania. So my question is, has any of that, is that something we can use within those new slots or stuff of that nature? Do we have a opportunity to set a couple of those extra trains from the north going south?
So within the agreement, thanks for the question, Supervisor Skinner. So within the agreement, there are a couple of service or operating plan elements, but I'll have to say that the key to what we refer to as bidirectional service or reverse flow service, if you will, the key to that is going to be the Long Bridge or the new Long Bridge. As I know most of you know, we all understand that the Long Bridge is the bottleneck. And so the Long Bridge is slated for near the, or slated not to begin construction, or the project's actually already begun in in the design phase. That project just received environmental clearance in September. So, but it's going to be near the end of that 10-year period, Mr. Skinner. So, but within that, there's some flexibility within the operating plan such that as the other planned improvements are being completed, that we can go back and revisit the operating plan. And what I mean by that is there may be some, some flexibility depending on, some updates on scheduling. And keep in mind, we're looking at this this is Amtrak, VRE, and CSX trains all trying to coexist in this same corridor. So there is an opportunity potentially maybe before the Long Bridge is constructed. But I have to tell you, after looking at, having been knee deep in these operations models and stuff like that, that's just going to be very problematic until we get that Long Bridge constructed. So.
But there are provisions in there
Absolutely.
that if we decide that we want to do Long Bridges up and running, that we can start traffic going from north down to south.
Yes, sir.
I think that's very important for the southern localities. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from DRPT?
No questions, but I will relay Mr. Kelly's concerns to our rail division.
That'll be great.
Thanks.
And then members of the General Assembly.
Madam Chair.
Senator Barker.
Yes, just to follow up on what Mr. Kelly and Mr. Skinner were talking about. I think that they're part of what we're trying to do from a state perspective is to make sure that we maximize the utilization and the benefits that we can get out of it. And I think that Mr. Horsley and Mr. Dalton and others certainly are correct in terms of the perspective that we have to take care of the Long Bridge. But we are moving fast on that. We're moving much faster than a lot of people thought we would just a couple of years ago in terms of getting agreement on things and also building up the pile of money that we'll need to fund the project and moving forward with what will be an effective solution, I think, in that category there. And there may be monies that come, from Maryland and DC and other places as part of that process, because most of them are very interested in being able to access readily, things in the Northern Virginia area, including, not only just the Fredericksburg area, Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, Stafford area, but also just in the Arlington area with the Amazon project coming in. They're looking for ways in which to be able to maximize and make it easy for people to get to jobs that are there. So there are a lot of options that I think are there. And if we're able to move forward more quickly on that, we certainly will. And if we're able to move forward more quickly with that project, that will help us in being able to have the reverse patterns from some of what we have right now of heading south to Spotsylvania in the morning and heading north from Spotsylvania in the afternoon as well.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any item that people would like to remove from 6.2 through 6.6? Prince William County? And I mean, when I mean that, I mean just from voting as a block. Stafford County? City of Manassas?
No.
Manassas Park?
No.
Fredericksburg? Mr. Kelly? Okay, and
No.
then
No.
in Spotsylvania?
None.
In General Assembly? Okay, with that, is there a motion to move item 6.2 through 6.6?
So moves, Kenny, Prince William County.
Is there a second?
Second, Supervisor Bailey.
Okay, last go around. Any questions or discussion from Prince William County?
None.
Stafford County?
None.
City of Manassas?
No.
Manassas Park?
None.
Fredericksburg?
None.
Spotsylvania,
None.
DRPT,
No.
General Assembly.
No.
Christine, will you please call the roll?
Yes, and I'll make a note that because Supervisor Bodie joined us right around the time that VRE started their report, Benny Smith is now a non-voting alternate. So starting with Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Yesli Vega,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Cindy Shelton,
Aye.
Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Jeanette Rischel,
Yes.
Matt Kelly,
Yes.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Yes.
Lee Carter,
Aye.
Elizabeth Guzman,
Aye.
George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Okay, we'll now move to item 7, public comment time. Were there any public comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. Several people submitted comments, and I will now read them to you. The first is from Marcus Anduze, who also sent this to Barbara Murdoch, the Keolis GM, so it was addressed to her but CC'd to me for inclusion in tonight's meeting. Dear Mrs. Murdoch, my name is Marcus Anduze, and I am a bus operator at Keolis. I am not pleased with the run pick that management has put together. It is not safe for us to have a different start time every day. I'm struggling with working a different start time every week. Also, some runs do not have enough time off between shifts. This is a DOT violation. Also, the runs are not paying 40 hours. We were not hired to be part-time employees. These schedules affect our livelihoods. We have children, spouses, and mortgages we have to take care of, and we cannot take care of our responsibilities on less than 40 hours a week. No other transportation company in this area has schedules similar to what you guys have come up with. Maybe you should get together with the managers from First Transit that you have kept, as well as drivers, and create schedules that will be suitable for everyone involved. We are trying to be a team, but it seems that you guys feel like we do it your way or get the hell out, and this is not making for a good work environment. We have a very good shop steward, and she is more than willing to help out in any way. I don't know how long Keolis has been in business, but maybe you should look at other depots and find out how they make schedules, computer-generated schedules that don't work without human input. I hope we really can come together and work this out. I don't think it is that hard. Teamwork makes the dream work. The next message is from Lisa Dupree. I am writing this email with concerns about the run bid that we just had. I'm not complaining about the runs per se. It's that the different time frames every day is very unsafe. A normal person has several things on their mind and deals with a lot on a daily basis, where we don't need the stress of trying to remember day in and day out what time we have to report to work each day. When I report to work, I used to think of this as my safe haven, no stress and fun. This type of madness every day can cause fatigue and a lot of other problems like accidents. All we are asking is we do the same thing every day of the week with the same report time each day. It's really not too much to ask when every day we report here to drive customers, risking our lives with the circumstances of COVID. Sincerely, Lisa. The next message is from Teresa Taylor. We bus operators here at PRTC are considered to be essential employees. We're transporting people from all walks of life on a daily basis. While it was unforeseen concerning this pandemic, we as a people had to make adjustments to our lifestyles. It's a given. We have to take all the necessary precautions to stay safe and healthy. Sure, decisions were made to cut some routes temporarily due to lack of ridership. However, we're experiencing grave difficulties with Keolis's scheduling of the runs for the present routes we have. Previously, we were scheduled to have a run bid and it was canceled. DOT has regulations concerning how many hours an individual can drive, with the max being 10. The runs that were scheduled were between 10 and 15 hours, as well as numerous splits of 3 to 6 hours. Some of the scheduling was not conducive to our safety nor health and well-being. One day our report time would be 5 a.m. and the next 12 p.m., example, etc. Some of us consulted with Keolis management to be team players, trying to give our input, but that was null and void. We consulted with our union AFSCME to no avail. We're at this crossroad once again. The service change is upon us, and we're asking these issues to be addressed. Things got totally out of hand on December 1st. It was chaotic at our workplace. A hostile environment was created. In the past, we've reached out to the board with promises to get back with us, also to no avail, yet we've labored for some of you to be seated. All we ask is for someone to intervene to give attention to this matter. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. The next message is from Iris Alvarez. Hello, this is Iris Alvarez. I have been a bus operator for 15 years. I am just emailing you to express my concerns about the new routes. As you know, many of us have children to take care of. The new routes are causing us a lot of stress at different times, days, and routes. Not only that, some routes are not letting us have proper resting time, which can hinder our performance at work. I hope you take into thought all of this. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Iris Alvarez. And this is our final message from Rachel DiCarlo. My husband is a bus driver for PRTC. Yes, Keolis just took over the contract in Woodbridge that went into effect on November 1st, 2020. Do not let them fool you. They are not new to transportation to the USA or even new to Virginia. They operate in 16 countries, including 6 states in the USA. They operated having a transportation location here in Virginia for 10 years. Yet they are trying to give our drivers schedules that will put drivers at risk. They are at risk of accidents and loss of their jobs due to their inability to get proper rest, meals, exercise, and distractions from stress. When my husband applied to Keolis, he included that he has a disability. He put the only accommodation he needs is for me to have full access to all relevant information to help him and to be 100% involved in the bidding process. I spoke to Trish, the transition manager for Keolis, before November 1st and was assured they would comply. This week, I was denied 3 times from accessing the quiet room where all the schedules were posted on the walls. There is no private information in that room, just schedules. Visitors are allowed in that room, except me this week. They refused to give me a reason why. It is worth noting that I am a commercial driver. I do understand the typical bidding process and terminology. I do not work for Keolis. I used to work for First Transit in another state. In my embankment for information to help my husband, here are some things I have learned. 1, I have a packet of changes made to 27 schedules was given to me at 12:15, the day my husband's deadline to make his final decision, only 2 hours before his deadline. 2, Caroline, who I was meeting with, said each driver is informed of these changes the moment they come to bid. It was never told to the location's union representatives that changes were being made, and nothing was posted or sent to the drivers until I shared the packet given to me in an unofficial group chat with Ms. Gwen. She is a good person who genuinely cares about these drivers. 3, Trish, the transition manager, said there is a national level paid union representative. The next day, Carolyn said there has never been anyone from national. That's a Sunny reference. 4, Sunny is a paid union representative who is supposed to help the union and company solve issues. Instead, he is playing an active role of replacing the yard's elected union officials, and he is only representing the company's interests and stances. Even in my situation, he refused to help me advocate for my husband, or he'll get us access to all information to make the best decision on picking a schedule. 5, drivers who refuse are immediately given a similar route to their route now by Sunny, who signs off on it. 6, on day 1 of 4 that drivers were to turn in their bids to pick their schedules by seniority, 100% of these drivers were concerned about the safety of these schedules. The top 40 drivers have been with this yard over 11 years. They were also concerned that they all gave up their seniority to prove a point and to get the attention that this company to do better. 6, Sunny is very proud that he convinced 22 of the drivers to put in a bid. There is a video of that day showing Sunny yelling at drivers to turn in their bid at risk of losing their jobs and comparing this yard to Metro, whose drivers recently went on strike. He was yelling at them. Does this sound like a union official who cares about the drivers? He is paid by these drivers. The elected officials of this location's union agree with the drivers' reasons not to turn in bids. The contract stated that if a driver doesn't bid, then the union representative will choose for them. This was intended for drivers in leave or on vacation, not in protest, not when drivers are citing safety reasons. Finally, I wanted to get into more detail as to what make these schedules unsafe, but I'm out of time. Please talk to your elected officials for these drivers. Talk to these drivers. They are the ones behind the wheel, and they are concerned for their lives and the lives of their passengers. Don't wait for an accident or for this company to fire good, decent drivers to start holding this company accountable for how they are treating them. Sincerely, Jennifer Rachel DiCarlo.
Thank you for that. And if there's anyone watching or listening, Keolis is on the schedule to speak during the meeting, and they'll address some of those issues. So thank you for all those that have written in. Now we'll move into the consent agenda. As a reminder, we did remove item, oh, actually that's further down the road. So, so the consent agenda, items 8.1, which is a resolution to approve the consent agenda, 8.2, which is acceptance of our monthly jurisdictional financial report, which we do each month. 8.3 is the adoption of the schedule for 2021, and I'll let Bob address that, but it's my understanding there are no significant changes. And then 8.4 is the approval of PRTC's leave policy. 8.5 is approval of PRTC's telework policy. 8.6 is request for proposals to schedule and bus stop display signs and production services. And 8.7 is to endorse PRTC's congestion mitigation and air quality funding request for FY 2027. And Dr. Schneider, I will turn it over to you to address those items.
Yes, so 8.2 is very straightforward. It's your typical jurisdictional financial report. 8.3, there is no significant change other than we have both the January and February meetings pushed back 1 week each in order to account for the jurisdictions to give time to make appointments to the varying boards at the January meeting. And then February, there's a conflict with VACO. So that's been adjusted for that. And then the only other adjustment is, of course, we move back due to the Independence Day holiday. That is the other date which we move, as we have difficulty getting the quorum either immediately before or immediately after Independence Day. So that moves it to the 8th. Leave policy is adding Juneteenth to our current policy. So it's currently been approved as a state holiday. We did a survey of all of our regional peers, and they'll be moving forward with that this year. So we've included that. Formalizing the telework policy, 8.5. We've never had a formal telework policy. It's been an operational and a managerial item. With what we've learned from COVID and some of the changes, we needed to put some accountability, but also some expectations for employees so that they know what the ground rules are, et cetera. It's just a way to bring some equity into that so we can help resolve some of the questions and concerns we've got. Technically, it's a managerial document, but we wanted to include it as a policy So the board approves all formal policy as it relates to the handbook, and then just routine items for approving bus schedules, for graphic design, for finalization, and then production. And then we have a CMAQ application, which we do that will help provide grant funds for whether it be operating or capital equipment. So that is the consent agenda.
Okay, are there any questions about any of those items from Prince William County?
No questions?
Any questions from Stafford County?
No questions.
City of Manassas?
No questions.
Manassas Park?
No questions.
Fredericksburg?
No questions.
Spotsylvania?
No questions.
DRPT?
No questions.
And the General Assembly?
No questions.
I have
Okay.
a question, Madam Chair.
Oh,
Delegate
Guzman,
Guzman.
Delegate Guzman.
Yes, sorry, Senator. I just need to understand how the holiday policy works. Does it mean that we don't have, I would guess, public transportation those days? And if someone could give me some background on how the decision was made not to have services during the holidays, Madam Chair.
Okay, to clarify, the holiday is distinct from whether we operate service, so it doesn't declare a holiday of no service. What we do is we either operate full service or a modified holiday service, depending on the date. But what it does is it provides the day off for employees. This is similar to what the state has done. And then if we do have we have services that are running, those employees will just simply have a floating holiday that they can use as a later time. So it's independent of transit service. It's a holiday as a benefit for the workers of the organization.
Thank you for the clarification. Modified service is what we have for holidays. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if there are no other questions, what I would like to do is have a motion to accept 8.2 through 8.7. But first I'll go through the jurisdictions to ask if anyone would like to remove any item from that list. Prince William County?
No?
Stafford County?
No, we don't need to remove any.
City of Manassas?
No.
Manassas Park?
No.
Fredericksburg?
No.
Spotsylvania?
No.
DRPT?
No.
And the General Assembly?
No.
Okay, is there a motion to move items 8.2 through 8.7?
So moved. Kenny Bodie, Prince William County.
Second.
Pam Sebastian.
Okay, we'll take the second from Vice Chair Sebeski. Any last discussion or questions from Prince William County?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Stafford County?
No questions.
City of Manassas?
No questions.
Manassas Park?
No questions.
Fredericksburg?
No questions.
Spotsylvania?
No questions.
DRPT?
No questions.
And the General Assembly?
No questions.
Calling the roll is the hardest part of this, by the way. Christine, can you please call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson.
Aye.
Yesli Vega,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Cindy Shelton,
Aye.
Pam Sebeski,
Aye.
Jeanette Rischel,
Yes.
Matt Kelly,
Yes.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Yes.
Lee Carter,
Aye.
Elizabeth Guzman,
Aye.
and George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
All right, we'll now move into Executive Director's time, item 9.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First thing I wanted to do is provide an update regarding fleet. We have a purchase of 6 vehicles that was approved in early 2020. Obviously, we did not know how long the pandemic or what the length would be, but this was approved in early 2020. These are expansion vehicles paid for through the external grant funds of Commuter Choice. I believe these are specifically funded through the I-66 grant services, and they are replacing older vehicles that we had placed in service as kind of like a rotating fleet. So those will be on the assembly line late this month, I believe, and then we should have them delivered sometime in early spring. We are definitely recognizing the fact that we have the decreasing services, all of those things in consideration, but with much of what we're seeing regarding vaccines, the opportunity for growth in services, et cetera, we are preparing for the future, but we are exceptionally mindful of those things. It is a purchase order that was let, I believe, in February. So we're just moving forward through that. We're also beginning the process of identifying our fleet numbers for what would be an April 2021 service change in terms of relocation of some of the fleet to the Western facility. We've already started moving some vehicles that are taking up space in the yard while we have the reduced service in order to get them for either A, training, or B, out of the yard to provide more room for operations at the Woodbridge facility. Ridership is continuing to climb along those lines. October was a pretty decent month for us. We were back up to about 25% on commuter services, which was really good. Obviously, we just closed November, so our data is still on a bit of a lag there. And we were up to 65% on our local services. So really continuing to see that growth doing a daily count right now, the last couple of weeks, obviously with the holiday. But what has been the general trend is a few things. Number one, through a regional providers meeting at the Pentagon, they identified that they had swelled their workforce to 60% reporting. They are decreasing that down to 40% in response to the COVID-19 concerns. So we are expecting a ridership dip again, directly parallel to that, because the Pentagon is our most populous route for commuter-based services at this time. We still have ridership into other areas, but the Pentagon-based services are the most effective for us. With that, reminder that we suspended several state-run routes at the end of the month. In short, they had run out of state funding. We offset the state dollars with fares, and due to the lack of fares, we ended up using up the majority of state money in the first 5-6 months. As a matter of fact, the entire month of November, we covered the cost of that as an organization, as opposed to state grants, which will of course be reimbursed by CARES Act. So we're not going to be using local funding for that, but those are examples of where we have operational service that we've suspended in order to A, contain costs. Once we spend that revenue hour, the revenue hour is gone. So it's been very, very important for us to minimize our services. We're only operating at 85% already. The service change that we have forthcoming was originally supposed to be put in place at the start of November to contain these costs. We've already spent about $150,000 more than we should have in terms of having that service and change in place. So we're helping hold some fiscal feet to the fire so that we can have more services at a longer time period. Had we not made changes, our CARES funding would have ended and we'd be in a very dire situation in January. Instead, it's much later in spring. Doesn't mean that we're in a fantastic fiscal position, but we're not at a cliff point, which some of which you may have read on that WMATA. A good example of that is their new proposal has 19 stations closing. They're proposing 30-minute frequency on the rail service, which will have some impacts for how we operate our services. They're also proposing no weekend service on their rail lines. And so between and service capping at 9 p.m. So looking at some of those things, we track very closely with Metro Rail, as does Loudon. So those are one of the things that we continue to watch for. We closely monitor their rail system because it really is commuter driven. They're even looking at reducing a significant amount of their local services. For us, that's not our focus because we don't operate anywhere near the volume they do. So along those lines and all those concerns with run cuts, cost management, those things, I had actually asked Keolis to prepare some information, and then you heard from public comment some of the very concerns about that. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Keolis to give an update and maybe address some of the overarching concerns that you may have heard tonight.
Thank you, Bob. Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity for us to address the concerns you've heard tonight. But let me say first about our bid process. Safety is our first concern for employees, riders, and the community. There are no DOT violations, and we know change is hard. On Monday, November 30th, we started our bid run pick, which concluded today at 3:30. Out of 144 operators, there were only 7 drivers who did not pick. And per the union agreement, those runs were selected by their union representative. These runs are safe and violate no federal or state regulation. Again, we understand that change is hard, and we will educate and teach our team innovative processes for run cutting. We've established a bid committee for the next service change that will include drivers because we want their input. We've worked with them over 10 times trying to get the bid just right. The next service change is estimated in April, and we look forward to having all of their input. But overall, we've had a great first month of providing service here at the PRTC. We were on time, absenteeism was low. We were in clean and sanitized buses, cleaning twice a day. So I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have. Also on the line is Mike Ake, our Senior Vice President at Keolis, who looked at many of the run concerns and we were able to address them.
Ms. Murdoch, this is Chair Franklin. Thank you for your comments. I know we have a meeting coming up next week, and I know you've met with some of the other commissioners already, which I think is helpful. Can you explain a little bit about the type of outreach that you all have been doing to employees and what that outreach will look like moving forward? Have you spoken to those that have concerns? Are there, you mentioned about the 7 individuals. Are there more individuals who may have had concerns but did pick a run? Can you just speak a little bit about that?
We listed all the runs up in our break room so that each individual could come and, review the runs. There were concerns expressed, and our team sat with each one to go over their run. My understanding is that this is a first for them to have such involvement in their runs. And we told them about the bid committee and the things that they could do to help us make these runs better. We've been going through this for about 2 months. When we first started, we were unable to get a lot of the past information about the runs, and we sat with many of the drivers to get their input. So we're pretty close to what the runs look like before. There are really minuscule kind of differences.
Are there any questions for Keolis, starting with Prince William County?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Bodie?
I heard Supervisor Angry. Was that you?
Yeah, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that. And I know that we're not going to get too deep in the weeds, but I know a lot of the concerns revolved around different runs for different days, and it sort of causing a little bit of instability there with folks' schedules. I know this is a sort of a trying time for everyone, and for Keolis to come in at this sort of moment in time, I know is not easy. So I guess my question is to dig a little deeper is, how is it being addressed with folks' concerns about having sort of inconsistent times and with their runs?
Barb, if you don't mind, I'll jump in here.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. Obviously, it's very important to us. Getting the proper employee engagement during a run change is very important. Run changes in our business are always a problem. Everyone would love to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but unfortunately transit doesn't work that way. We did some quick research, and just for context for the group, we did actually 13 different renditions of this run cut. And the changes each time were based on input from driver engagement opportunities, local union and international union. And one of the strange things going on is interaction between the local union and the international right now. And without going into great detail, the complaints that we received and that the board received We had the unusual opportunity to research real quick exactly what the drivers were complaining about versus what the runs they actually ended up with. So as an example, Mr. Anduzzi, who talked about different start times, he has 2 different start times. 2 days a week, he reports at 4:10 a.m. and 3 days a week, he reports at 5 a.m. There's a 50-minute difference. Obviously, that's not great, but it's really not bad in transit. He also had some concerns about less than 40-hour work weeks. The bid that he was actually awarded was 42.3 hours of paid time each week. The difference is drivers receive more paid time than they actually receive for driving, because there's pre-trip and post-trip and deadhead time that they get paid for. So he also had a concern about time off from one end date to the start time the next morning. He is over 10 hours off. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's well in excess of what the DOT requires. Split shift workers, unfortunately, get part of their time off during the middle of the day. So they don't have 12 hours or 16 hours off from start time to end time. Unfortunately, it's the nature of the business. Mr. Pree, who also had some.
And actually, this is Chair Franklin. Just out of respect for, and I know some of those spoke publicly, but I don't know that we need to go through their specifics.
Okay.
Just out of respect for them. So if you just want to speak generally about,
Sure.
to give examples generally.
If you're all right, Madam Chair, I've got stats from the current run cut, which is actually First Transit run cut that we inherited in our December 20th run cut. Because of the service reduction, we've gone from 45 straights, no split time, 45 straight runs to 39 straights. And we went from 108 splits under the current run cut to 106 under the new run cut. There were some concerns about not enough hours in our run cuts. The current run cut has one run less than 30 hours. The new run cut has no runs less than 30 hours. The current one had 7 between 30 and 35. The new one has 6 between 30 and 35. The big difference is in forced overtime. The current run cut has 103 runs between 40 and 45 hours. We have 57 between 40 and 45 hours. That's that off time, relief time that's so important, we think, for the drivers. I can talk about straights and splits and average times if you like. All of our stats show a very slight improvement from the current run cut to the new run cut. It's effective this month. The problem is, and I know this group understands, when you reduce service even a little bit, it has a ripple effect on everybody's run, because we have to maximize the use of the asset, the bus, and minimize the impact on the drivers. And it's a tightrope walk for us. We can't increase the number of buses required when we're operating less service, because that has a bad financial impact for the authority, obviously. That's the short version. I'm happy to answer details.
That's about the right amount of detail I wanted to hear. I guess my concern, in addition to what has already been aired, is that obviously as we move forward with opening up the Westman facility, I would imagine that's going to change runs and schedules and things like that. And I hope that by the time that happens and that Westman facility is up and running completely, that we'll be able to get a cleaner handle on these issues, so we're not encountering the same sort of concerns and issues and back and forth and having to change the runs 10 times, for example. So that's just a concern I wanted to air, and I just wanted a little bit more clarity on what was being done to address that. So I appreciate it.
Well, and actually, let me just correct something. I mean, the runs, I think, were changed that many times because she was working with them to get the runs together that she thought that they would be okay with. Ms. Murdoch, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes, we were trying to make sure that we included them in this decision-making and give them basically what they needed. So we were working on several iterations of it for about 10 times until we came to this final one. We've even postponed the picks so they could have more input.
Supervisor Bodie, does that make sense?
It does, and I appreciate that, Madam Chair. I meant that on both sides of the equation, so thank you for that clarity.
Okay. Supervisor Angry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm gonna try to be quick, but really kind of thorough with this. And so I know we have some of the operators probably on watching this call, and we've heard the questions. You know, I've communicated with many of them. I've also had a long conversation with Ms. Murdoch, and I don't want this to get lost in where we are. So this is a compounding of issues. You know, we came through the first transit piece, and here we are. We have a new killers operating here. And remember, we're in COVID now. So to couple COVID with what we're doing, the bus routes cut short. So we're not fully where we need to be, but we have these issues. And I say that because, you know, we're in a delicate situation where we've just started out the new services, and I appreciate, and I've heard nothing but great things about Keolis to get there. But I want to say to our operators, our bus drivers, you know, we're going to work through this. You know, change is hard. I want to say that first. But I also want to say, the concerns are here. We hear those, and it's going to take some time and processes to get to the place where the river's flowing smoothly. And here's what I want to say too. Let's not call them complaints. Let's just call them concerns, because, you know, people are very sensitive to how these issues are. And we've heard a lot of these concerns today just in our public comment time. But I want to ask that we hang in there. I've said since we started the new transition, let's start with a clean slate. And I know that's the attempt that we're going after. Some of the concerns I've heard, you know, I want us to dig a little bit deeper. I know these routes are different and the times are a little harder. 50 minutes here or there, I know it's something. Safety is the number one issue. We know this, but let's keep that in mind. And I want to ask the one question of this. Once we get through this and we get back to our services, do we have an issue with the shortage of bus drivers? Like at some point, will we need to be discussing more to make these routes more efficient for the system itself and safety if those are issues?
The short answer, Supervisor, currently we're not short of drivers. If service level increases to pre-COVID levels, we will definitely need to hire. The good news, PRTC is very competitive in their wages, entry-level wages for drivers. We specifically included increases, and I have to be careful what I say here, but increases so that we remain to be compatible against the competitors at Fairfax County, which is your primary competitor for drivers. So we have every anticipation of our general manager being successful hiring drivers when the time comes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Are there any more questions from Prince William County?
No questions.
Okay. Stafford County?
No questions.
Spotsylvania?
No questions.
Okay. Fredericksburg?
No questions.
City of Manassas? Manassas Park?
No questions.
And the General Assembly?
No questions.
Yeah, and before we move on, I'll just say we're going to continue to have these discussions because, you know, we do hear from the bus operators. I've gotten the emails, and I plan to, you know, reach out to those individuals over the next couple of days. And, you know, I think to Supervisor Angry's point, you know, we are in a time of transition. So it's going to take a lot of patience. And I know coming off First Transit, that's asking for a lot because people are at their end with a lot of this. But you know, I want us to be able to develop a relationship with Keolis that is open, transparent, and where our bus operators are actively involved in the day-to-day in terms of their schedules and things of that nature. And we want to hear their concerns. So to those that have put in public comments and sent us emails and reached out to us, we will speak to all of you. We are doing the best we can to make this work out. So thank you for that. With that, we'll move on to item 10, presentations.
Madam Chair, I
Dr.
do want
Schneider?
to, yes, I wanted to give a legislative update. Just
Oh,
this is
sure.
actually relatively brief.
Yep.
To recap, we had the CARES Act that everyone's familiar with. There was phase 1, 2, and 3. That was April. Over summer, the House of Representatives passed what is the HEROES Act, and I forget the economic recovery acronym that comes out of that. But that's the one, if you recall, I mentioned that both the Senate and White House identified that as dead on arrival. That had the most had the provisions that were tied to enhanced pay for frontline workers, wide variety of different policies, expanding the unemployment amounts, et cetera. But that, again, dead on arrival. And we have two things staring us down right now. Number one is we have the federal government shutdown on December 11th. That's the deadline for Friday, December 11th. So based upon that, we may even see lower ridership than we saw in the earliest days of COVID, because we only have a handful of employees or workers riding anyway. Then if they're shut down, we might see an even lower level of that. So that's something to watch for. We have seen indications that the House and Senate are working to try to avoid that, including from the White House. What is distinct is on Tuesday, Senators Romney, Collins, and most importantly, Senator Warner, so we're very thankful of that, put together a $908 billion bipartisan bill. It's the first time that I'm sure you've seen that you've had movement from either side of the proverbial aisle in terms of the partisan aspect move toward it. That part of the bill has $450 billion earmarked for transportation. It does not call out specifically to mass transit, and certainly it doesn't all go to us, but that includes likely Amtrak, airports, ferries, a wide variety of different enterprises under the transportation umbrella. The CARES Act had $25 billion. So this is good from the standpoint that it's a larger dollar amount, but at the same time, there's deeper impacts that we've seen, for example, in the airline industry. So even though there's that increased amount, it does not necessarily mean it will translate the same way, nor does it mean that it will trickle down to the smaller agencies such as us. The big concern is, if, describing what I did for WMATA, San Francisco Muni, this doesn't include the Bay Area Rapid Transit or Oakland or anything like that, just Muni, the San Francisco transit system proper, is looking at 1,400 layoffs. Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia, Los Angeles. So there's heavy leaning toward providing the resources to those large systems, which ends up leaving a lot of the smaller systems. We're considered mid-sized out of the loop. So we're working very hard with our legislative folks. I was on a several-hour conference call today, working through the American Public Transportation Association, the mid-sized committee, to stress those items and to make sure our voices are being heard. We do have a great voice through Senator Warner in his office, as well as Senator Kane. And of course, we do have our many board members, commissioners, et cetera, who have influence in Washington, D.C. So that's just where we sit for right now. We are very optimistic for some type of additional extension by the end of the year or soon after that would really allow us to continue. But our focus remains on preserving continuity of service and preserving employment for our dedicated workers. So with that, unless there's any questions on the legislation, we can move forward at your discretion.
Okay, very quickly, it is 8:30 and we do have a few more items we need to get through. Are there any questions from Prince William County for Dr. Schneider?
No questions.
Stafford County?
None.
City of Manassas? Manassas Park?
No questions.
Fredericksburg?
No questions.
Spotsylvania,
None.
DRPT,
Questions?
and the General Assembly?
No question. No,
I
no,
do have a
Elizabeth.
question, Senator.
Delegate Guzman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think Bob was making, or Dr. Snyder, I apologize, was making a point about with the federal government reducing hours, that we are going to have less services. And I just want to follow up to see what that would mean. Would it mean that PRTC services will reduce again in December, Dr. Snyder? Transportation services?
So with our current run cut, we have a reduction where we've suspended a few routes already, but we've eliminated some very, very low ridership trips. We're already at about 85% of service compared to what we were at pre-COVID. And that was brought in, we've been at that service level since about, I want to say the end of June. June 24th is the date that jumps out in my head. 22nd, 24th. So we've been at that service level since then, but we do have some trips that are very unproductive that actually improve the schedule a little bit. If we left them in, it would actually make it harder for some of the driver runs. So we've removed those to make some improvements there. And then services will remain the same through April, unless we have any circumstances where grant funds are going to expire and we have employee attrition, things like that, that make it that balance where we'll report to the board that gives us the ability to manage those resources. Hopefully, we'll see that additional stimulus package that lets us remain very much as we are today. I do want to stress that the reductions are coming on the commuter side, not on the local side. The local service, we have bare bones already as it is, and that ridership's about 65% of what it normally was. We have some routes that, of course, are always relatively low productivity, but we're working hard to continue to drive ridership on that. But the local service will remain intact. We're just putting that attention on the unproductive commuter services, balancing that out. Helps preserve dollars for the local service as well.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Snyder.
Thank you, Delegate Guzman. We'll now move into presentations and on the class and comp study update. And they'll show the slides, I'm imagining, on the screen. And if you have them that was sent to you, that'll be good. It's not that many slides, and I just want us to be very, get through these with a purpose in the essence of time. So Ms. Mariner, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission members. You do have this presentation in your packet. We had hoped to be able to provide you in detail the results of the classification and comp study. So we can go to the next slide. What I'll do is I'll share with you just where we are to date. We have not gotten the final results. We started the classification and comp study. We engaged Baker Tilly at the end of March. So as you can imagine, when we started to do the surveys, sending them out to our peer organizations, and you can go to the next slide, we were delayed with COVID, certainly. And you can go on to the next slide. That's the project of scope. It's a compensation and class study. We did have a position analysis questionnaire where each one of our staff members for both for OmniRide and VRE completed. We sent out salary surveys. We've got back some of the classification information. You can go to the next slide. And where we are right now is just looking at the preliminary data. What we did find is some of the peer organizations that we feel like in our geographic area and in our industry, they had not responded. So we've asked for Baker Tilly to reach back out to those individuals to provide us information before we move into the final stage. So you can go to the next slide. So at that point, once they do the final report, because we are 90% there, so once we get the peer organizations to validate the data that we currently have with the classifications and the salary structures, then Baker Tilly will provide us a final report. And you can go to the next slide and final slide. And then we'll be able to come back to you and share an implementation strategy. And of course, then all staff training and implementation of the classification schemes. And I'll answer any questions that you have. Again, we had hoped to have a final report, but we don't have it right now. So I just really promised you an update, and I wanted to give that to you.
Okay, that went quicker than I expected. So please feel free to ask questions. Any questions from Prince William County?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Lawson.
Thanks. I don't really have a question. I just kind of want to be on record as saying, unless the financial circumstances really change for the better, I just think that this is going to be a tough, a high hurdle to clear. So I'm sure everybody else is aware of that too, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Any other questions or comments from Prince William County? Stafford County?
No questions.
City of Manassas?
No questions.
Manassas Park?
No questions.
Fredericksburg?
No questions.
Spotsylvania?
No questions.
DRPT?
No questions.
General Assembly?
No questions.
Okay.
Nope.
All right, well, okay, as a reminder, we did defer item 11.1. So we'll now go into item 11.2, ratification of the grant application submitted through Transit-Oriented Developmental Plan Program for federal funding from the Federal Transit Administration. Dr. Schneider, would you like to speak about this?
Sorry, thank you about the unmuting. And grant application that came out, opportunity at the end of September for transit-oriented development. That would be, for example, a small area plan or something like that where you're building infrastructure such as construction for retail, housing, et cetera, around transit areas. A great example of that is when you look into Washington, D.C. and some of the development you've seen around some of the rail stations. That can be funded by those dollars. Transit-oriented development is really, it's not about parking garages and transit. It's about that multi-use development that includes transit at its core. Prince William County wanted to apply. We are the grant recipient, and we could not hit the deadlines of the grant and get it to the commission in order to apply in time. So what we do is our normal process is we have applied for the grant in partnership with Prince William County, and then we bring it back to you to ratify after the fact. If we had not done it this way, Prince William County would have missed out on this opportunity to apply for this TOD grant. Worked very closely, really want to appreciate Paolo Belita from Prince William County working so closely with our grants team, Betsy Massey, to get this done, as well as Parham Palestran. So if there's specific questions about the TOD component, we can answer that, but at least we want to ratify this tonight. I think Paolo may or may be on the call tonight and can answer some of the technical questions, but you can see inside the item itself what it pertains to and how that process moves forward.
Okay. Are there any questions from Prince William County?
No questions.
Okay, Stafford County?
No questions.
City of Manassas?
No questions.
Manassas Park?
No questions.
Spotsylvania?
No questions.
Fredericksburg?
No questions.
DRPT?
No, no questions.
General Assembly?
No questions.
Okay. Christine, would you mind calling the roll?
I don't think we have a motion yet.
Oh, that is true. My apologies. Is there a motion to move item 11.2?
So move, Vic Angry.
Is there a second?
Second, Supervisor Bailey.
All right. Christine, would you call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Yesli Vega,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Cindy Shelton,
Aye.
Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Jeanette Rischel,
Yes.
Matt Kelly,
Yes.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Yes.
Lee Carter,
Aye.
Elizabeth Guzman,
Aye.
George Parker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Thank you. We'll now move into item 11.3. And what I'll do, I'll have Dr. Schneider, if you can just speak very briefly about this. And then Supervisor Lawson, I'm not sure if you wanted to speak as well with your role with the VRE. And then we'll take questions. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Schneider.
Yes. In a nutshell, COVID and money is the key issue as it relates to not just national funds, but also local, state and local level issues. One thing I have to compliment DRPT and the North Administration have been fantastic, made available funds for us out of the gates and continue to be. So we just want to continue to build on that, but money tends to be the key driver. One of the very important things that we're also trying to push for is states will have considerable latitude in deciding vaccine order. Transit workers are considered what is called a phase 2 or a tier 2, look different ways. So I would imagine, for example, Vice Mayor Sabeski is tier 1 in her role as a healthcare provider, but then the frontline workers are going to be that tier 2. Well, there's considerable latitude in statewide administrations who can put more people up or push people down. So we are working as a statewide coalition to try to move that forward to continue to have that. And DRPT has been wonderfully responsive. So while that may not be the kind of thing that typically gets attention, that is very important and very available as we move forward on that. Stimulus packages and emphasizing research and deployment, supporting the national trends. From there, preserving state revenues for the Virginia Transit Capital shortfall. I had a great talk with Jennifer DeBrule today from DRPT, and it was good that she reminded me, because we kind of lost track of this, is we're assuming, for example, that some things did not get done or did get done. The state actually passed through the General Assembly the omnibus transportation package that does provide capital, but it's flexibility, and kind of the doom and gloom scenarios of summer of revenues really drove a lot of the decision making, meaning we don't know at this point exactly what the fiscal impact will be. There is legislation to resolve some of the capital issues, but now that COVID's in place, we don't know what the long-term impacts will be. So the good news is there is a legislative fix, but then it's just the question of, can we continue to maintain DRPT's flexibility items through that? And then the last item is meetings held through, I shouldn't say last, the last item on the front page is meetings held through electronic communication means. That is, of course, working with NVTC, VRE. Fortunately, legal counsel Sharon Pandak is on the FOIA Advisory Council. So that gives us definite insight and support for that. From there, the second page is almost, in most cases, very nearly identical to last year. I'm not going to go through all of these items. I do want to say thank Mayor Rischel for taking the time to give some great feedback on this. She was a committee of one who volunteered. So in addition to that, we provided it to our state delegation members as well as our lobbyists and got some feedback and some other sources as well as chair and vice chair. So we think this reflects where we need to go. This does not mean we're locked in stone in terms of all priorities. We don't know what legislation is going to come forward. We do have our great representation on the commission through our senators and members of the House of Delegates. So we'll continue to work that way in addition to our support on Capitol Hill as we work with the U.S. Senator's office, as well as the representation out of Rob Whitman and Jerry Connolly's offices. So with that, I would hope, unless there's any questions, we can get approval for this so that we can include this in the materials for Monday morning's meeting.
Yeah, Mayor Rischel and Supervisor Lawson, do you all have any comments before we take questions?
No, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Supervisor Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bob, I just wanted to, I guess, ask or try and clear up any confusion related to the VRE legislative agenda when it comes to the electronic meetings. The language that was approved unanimously by the VRE Ops Board was passed as such. Now, the legislative agenda for PRTC is a little bit different. And I understand that not everybody that serves on the commission also serves on the VRE, but in full disclosure, Elizabeth Bennett Parker from the city of Alexandria presented an additional sentence that the commissioners will find in their legislative packet for VRE. And essentially, she is kind of leading the charge for getting a little bit more flexibility from the state related to the electronic meetings, and the cap right now I believe is at 2, and Sharon Pandak can correct me if I'm wrong. But I wanted to find out if there's a specific position that PRTC has that's counter to the VRE, or could we adopt the VRE? I guess I'll throw that out there. Are the commissioners open to adopting the exact language that the VRE passed?
And this is Chair Franklin, and Supervisor Lawson and I talked about this briefly before the call, and I've also spoken in the past to Elizabeth Bennett Parker. She did inform me that MVTC backed off of the amendment that they were looking to do. And so, to Supervisor Lawson's point, the question is, do we adopt the same language? I would say that to me that seems to make the most sense. But maybe we'll call on each jurisdiction for feedback. Supervisor Lawson, is that okay with you?
Sure, absolutely.
Madam Chair, if I might just interject before you do that, if you don't mind. I am on the Conflict of Interest Council, not the FOIA Council, but I
apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. Sometimes you all may think they all sound the same. And they're both equally hard to read, but I'm sure that's with all good reason by our General Assembly. With respect to the FOIA amendments, and the FOIA Council actually did recommend some language yesterday that is similar, and it may be useful to just know where it is. It's more flexibility than candidly I thought would actually come out of that council. It would allow with a 25% of meeting limitation, as opposed to what was just mentioned as being a limitation of 2 per year. So 25% or rounded up to the next whole number, which is if it's greater. And then also allows a family member's serious medical condition that requires the member to provide care to be a reason for missing the meeting and doing it electronically as opposed to in person. So those are the two things that are in the recommendation that came out of the FOIA Council that will go in. Hopefully someone will patron that in the General Assembly. So it may be useful as everyone looks at this and realizes what the dynamics are, particularly in dealing with the Virginia Coalition for Open Government and other groups that traditionally do not like to have that kind of flexibility on electronic meetings because they believe there's greater transparency when they're meeting in person. You may want to reflect on that as you sort of decide where you want to be on legislation going forward. So I just pass that along as informational, not to take a particular position, but to just let you know what the current status is.
Yeah, I think, at least from my perspective, and I think the greater the flexibility, the better. And so that's kind of where I am. So In terms of, I guess, next steps with this, the question that Supervisor Lawson raised is, are we okay with making consistent our language with that of VRE? And Ms. Pandak, you obviously mentioned with FOIA just put out. So I guess, what is the recommended next step? Ms. Pandak.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I leave that to both of your entities as to where you want to be on this. The only other thing I would mention is that as long as we are in a state of emergency, then these flexible provisions are really not going to be applicable. It's going to be more the continuity of government and being able to pass those ordinances or resolutions and continue to meet remotely. So this other flexibility would be for normal times.
And if I can proffer a next step, what this does is the language in here does not lock us in anything. It's working with the other peer organizations. And to Ms. Pandak's point, it's what gets shepherded through the General Assembly. So depending on what bill shows up there, it will then drive a question of what level of support do we provide for that. And if the general will is to be as flexible as possible, then it's just us working through our different membership to say, yes, we support this. It's the kind of thing, it's not as if it's, fiscal dollars, et cetera. The Assembly's somewhat going to do what the General Assembly wishes with guidance from the FOIA Council, as well as, I'm assuming, some legal guidance moving through that. So there's really not a hard, firm position we should take per se, just knowing that if the will is to be as flexible as possible to support that as the bill gets introduced, I would assume something would probably come forward in the before the session actually begins in the early filing period. That would be my best guess.
So can we just decide now if, would it be easier just to decide whether we want to be consistent with VRE?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I know it's the practice of Senator Barker not to vote on the legislative agenda itself, which I fully respect. However, I'm curious if he would be willing to give us advice or any of the other state legislators, but given Senator Barker's longtime experience, I'm certainly interested in hearing his words of wisdom on if leaving it as is probably more beneficial in the long run.
All right, well, I'll be happy to answer that. I
And
do.
Senator Barker, just just in the essence of time, if we can move with the brevity, that would be helpful.
Okay. I think, basically all options that you talked about are reasonable proposals there that would not necessarily injure anything as it relates to the rest of the legislative package. I am chair of the General Laws and Technology Committee, and this action would have to come through my committee. So I definitely will be abstaining from voting on it today. It was discussed last winter in the session because Elizabeth Bennett Parker had taken that issue to a local legislator in Alexandria who put in a bill, but it did not pass. Whether the action of the FOIA Council will help get it through this year, I don't know yet, but it's certainly something that we will entertain if we have a legislation coming forward on it.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's Ms. Pandak. I'm really thankful that you threw out there what the FOIA Council is considering. And the language does include the FOIA Advisory Council, so I feel comfortable with that. So, I mean, if other members of the commission want to weigh in, I don't want to monopolize the conversation because I think I agree with Senator Barker. I think either option is suitable.
Yeah, and so what I'll do is I'll go by each jurisdiction. I will say, I think for purposes of maybe efficiency, maybe we can just adopt what VRE has already done. And then obviously it sounds like this conversation will evolve depending on the legislation that's actually introduced. And so maybe we adjust as we know more about those particular pieces of legislation. So that would be my recommendation as the chair. And so I guess what I will be asking each jurisdiction now, are you okay with making the language consistent with VRE?
Madam Chair.
Prince William County.
Yeah, Madam Chair. Supervisor Bodie here. I'm comfortable with us being conform with VRE. Also because Ms. Bennett Parker also says on NVRC and brought up a very similar point at one of our previous NVRC meetings. And, we generally agreed with her there and I supported her heavily there. So just for consistency's sake, I'm gonna support her here as well.
Anyone else from Prince William County?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Supervisor Bailey. I am in agreement with the consistency.
Okay, anyone not in agreement?
You mean, Madam Chair, any locality?
Well, Prince William County.
Oh,
but
Prince William County,
it
okay.
Sounds like, okay. Stafford County, anyone not in agreement?
No.
Ms. Shelton, did you say yay or nay?
I said that let me go the opposite side. We are in an agreement that they should be consistent.
Okay. Okay. City of Manassas,
I'm in agreement.
Manassas Park.
I have a question, Madam Chair. Is the VRE language consistent with the FOIA Council language?
It's a good question.
Ms. Pandak, it sounds like it's, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know for sure the answer to that. My recollection is that it's similar, but I can't say that for sure.
Because I would tend to favor being consistent with the FOIA Council language as opposed to consistent with the VRE. Thank you.
Perhaps somebody from VRE, Ms. Supervisor Lawson, you may know.
Madam Chair.
One second, Supervisor Bailey. So is anyone from VRE on?
Madam Chair, they've probably gone to their NVTC meeting.
Okay, so we'll hold there. Supervisor Lawson, any insight into that? I'm assuming we just don't know for sure.
Yeah. Mayor Rischel, they don't match, but I would say that given what Sharon Pandak reported, it certainly is it's a great amendment for what the VRE legislative amendment has. So I think that they'll work together, if that makes sense. They certainly are complementary of each other.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Fredericksburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of you might know that I have always had an issue with us deferring to other organizations and the state. We need to state as localities what we believe and ask for it and not defer, and no offense to our state representatives. So the more flexibility, the better. Let's make a specific ask. And if it happens, it happens. If it's not, it doesn't. But at least they know what we are actually thinking and not that we're waiting to defer to what they want to do. Thank you.
Spotsylvania.
I don't have anything. I don't know if Gary does.
Mr. Skinner?
I would have to agree with what Matt Kelly just said. I would back him on that, to be honest with you. So
Okay.
I think what we've asked for in the VRE is a good product.
DRPT.
We have no position.
Right. General Assembly.
As I stated, I will abstain on this issue.
Sure. Now, Ms. Pandak, do you recommend that we take an official vote on this?
I'm going to defer to Dr. Snyder on the question of taking an official vote. I don't think that's my place. I will say to you all that one of the best things you can do is you go back to your localities and look at the General Assembly session and talk about these issues as you point to the effectiveness that you have had during this COVID time electronically, and the transparency that you have endeavored to have with the public, because I think those are going to be the two key things that will weigh into any discussion of making exemptions from in-person meetings more palatable.
And actually, I think I may have gotten it wrong. It sounds like what VRE has done is already in our legislative package. Is that correct, Ms. Lawson? So we would just have to take a vote on item 11.3, which I think already includes that language. Is that right?
Yes and no. It includes it with the exception of one sentence that the VRE package has that PRTC doesn't. So I'll move the item forward with the additional language that was included on the VRE so that they match.
Matt Kelly seconding.
What is the language? May we hear what the language is?
Sure. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It says after the sentence that ends, add, this includes support for removing the state limit on how often members may participate electronically when there is a physical quorum present, while retaining VRE's authority to govern such participation with additional guidelines or restrictions. So substitute while retaining PRTC's authority to govern with, do you want, I can also email this to everybody.
Yeah, please, because one thing that just to be clear is we've left this to be open-ended in that different jurisdictions may have different policies, rules, preferences. So for us, we look at it as you are 6 different jurisdictions. We want to help you do whatever you want to do. This isn't something that we have a hard and fast rule for. I think to Mr. Bodie and your point, much of this was driven at the VRE level due to some unique circumstances by a member of the Alexandria City Council. We are absolutely supportive of that. We can include that language, but this is just a legislative agenda that lets us move forward in supporting of those kinds of things.
Yeah,
so word for word language isn't required.
Okay. And frankly, what the FOIA Council has offered is actually what I like even more than this other sentence. But I think what you're saying is you understand the flavor of it.
Yes, ma'am. And I would like to personally see if we can get Senator Barker to have Sharon Pandak put on the FOIA Council so that when I get that wrong next year, I'm not wrong.
So we do have a motion with that amendment, and there was a second by somebody. I forgot.
Kelly.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, moved by Supervisor Lawson, seconded by Mr. Kelly. Any discussions from Prince William County?
Yes, Madam Chair, for Supervisor Lawson, would you like for me to share with you, as you're sharing with the group, the actual amendment or letter that Supervisor Bennett Parker or Vice Mayor Bennett Parker has written? Would that help?
That'd be great.
I'll share it with you tonight.
Sure. It's probably, I have it, but I'm guessing the rest of the commission needs it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so we're not sending separate emails. I'll just share with you tonight.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are there any more questions from Prince William County? Stafford County?
None.
City of Manassas?
Nothing.
Manassas Park?
Madam Chair, so the FOIA Council recommends a 25% more lenient requirement. Is the implication on the VRE language that it would remove, that it asks for a complete raising of the cap? What I'm fuzzy as to what they're asking for.
You want me to take that?
Yeah, I guess in the interim, I don't see Ms.
I guess, does it mean the sky's the limit, that the person never has to attend a meeting or?
Yeah, and that's a very fair question. And I certainly don't think that that's the best interest of anybody. But it does say this includes support for removing the state limit on how often members may participate. So if you would feel better, we can strike that amendment and adopt what the FOIA Council is recommending, which is that 25% meeting limitation. If that's something that you would offer as a friendly amendment, I'll accept it.
I would offer that as a friendly amendment. Thank you very much, Supervisor Lawson.
You're welcome. And then whoever, I think Matt seconded the friendly amendment or the amendment.
That's fine. I will accept it. That's fine with the friendly amendment. I just want us to be more specific and a little bit more specific on our ask instead of being so deferential all the time. We need to tell them what we want to see, not what they want to hear.
So I think procedurally, so I guess we were in discussion. So Ms. Pandak, are we now voting on the friendly amendment?
It sounds to me that the friendly amendment was accepted by the maker of the motion, and therefore you don't have to vote on it. You can vote on the main motion, which now includes the amendment.
Okay. All right. Going back, so is there, I guess, are we in discussion now, or do we need to go back to the motion?
I think we're good to vote on the motion.
Right, and I will tell, since I'm talking, I will send to Christine and Dr. Snyder a copy of the article that has the attachment that of the draft legislation that came out of the FOIA Council with its recommendations, just so he can pass along to you all.
Okay.
We'll include that in our update that goes out tomorrow.
So I'm going to start this back over because now we have a friendly amendment to add the FOIA language as opposed to the VRE language. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any questions about that from Prince William County? And so I'm assuming that MVTC, which language does MVTC have? Do they have the VRE language or the FOIA language?
I do not know. I doubt they have the FOIA language since that was yesterday. We'll just coordinate with them again, knowing that the minimum standard is what the FOIA Advisory Council is. That's what we'll lean into. So ultimately, whether the language won't change per se on the legislative agenda, because it's ultimately what gets proposed is what gets adopted. So just knowing that the standard is at a minimum, based on your feedback, the advisory council, the language in the document doesn't change.
That's right. And just to be clear, the FOIA language from yesterday does give us more flexibility than the VRE language.
I
believe that is the case, but I'm not entirely sure.
I would say,
I don't think so. I think
there we go.
The opposite.
what I would say,
go ahead.
Yeah,
what I would say,
go with what, at least for me, whatever gives us the most flexibility. But go ahead, Supervisor Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I would suggest is that what the FOIA language is probably politically more feasible. So I'm looking at this more from a pragmatic point now, because it's my understanding that the legislators are going to be very deferential to the FOIA Council. So, and I'm going to just predict that Elizabeth Bennett Parker is going to welcome the FOIA language as progress for what she's looking to do. So I think she'll embrace it, but that's a guess of mine.
Okay, so what I'll just say is, and some of you from Prince William County know that I was very adamant about making sure that we had the flexibility with the electronic meetings. So on principle, I'm gonna go with supporting the VRE language if it gives us the most flexibility. But obviously, I will support whatever the rest of the commission decides to do in the spirit of understanding what Supervisor Lawson said, that hopefully, and I'm sure Vice Mayor Bennett Parker will welcome with open arms any adjustment. Supervisor Lawson, I hope you understand that.
I totally do. Can I just ask Sharon one clarification?
Sure.
It's 25% limitation and family members serious medical conditions, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The answer, it's actually or not and, but there is one section that allows for inability to attend right now due to temporary or permanent disability. and then it adds in or a family member's similar situation. Then there's the or for not attending due to a personal matter. And that's limited now to 2 meetings per year. And the proposed change is or 25% of the meetings held per year, rounded up to the next number, unless, which is greater. So it's it's 2 different places it's being amended.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions or discussions from Prince William County? Stafford County,
None.
City of Manassas,
None.
Manassas Park,
No questions.
Fredericksburg,
No questions.
Spotsylvania,
No questions.
DRPT,
No, no questions.
and the General Assembly.
No questions.
Okay, Christine, will you call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
No.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Yesley Vega,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Cindy Shelton,
Aye.
Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Jeanette Rischel,
Yes.
Matt Kelly,
Yes.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Yes.
Lee Carter, Delegate Carter still with us?
Can I abstain on this one?
Yes. Delegate Guzman?
I think she left the meeting.
Okay. And George Barker.
Abstain.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Okay, thank you. We will now move into chair's time. One thing I will note is that we have to pick officers for the nominating committee to select a slate of officers for PRTC for next year. A slate of the VRE Operations Board members and alternate members that mirror the appointments made by the member jurisdictions. The slate of officers and VRE appointments need to be given to Dr. Schneider no later than Monday, January 4th, to be included in the January meeting packets as bylaws require. So far, Dr. Schneider has received the following nominations: Councilman Kelly from Fredericksburg, Supervisor Shelton from Stafford, Vice Mayor Sabeski from the City of Manassas, Mayor Rischel, Manassas Park, Supervisor Angry, Prince William County, and Supervisor Frazier, Spotsylvania. And if there's a motion in a second, we'll go into discussion.
I so move. Pam Sabeski.
Is there a second?
Second, Vic Angry.
Is there any discussion from Prince William County? Any discussion from Stafford?
None.
City of Manassas?
No.
Manassas Park?
No, Madam Chair.
Not sure if I call Stafford County. Fredericksburg?
No questions.
DRPT?
No.
And the General Assembly?
No questions.
Okay, Christine, will you please call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Yesley Vega,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Cindy Shelton,
Aye.
Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Jeanette Rischel,
Yes.
Matt Kelly,
Yes.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye. Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Yes.
Lee Carter,
Yes.
George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Okay, thank you. Just very quickly, I want to thank Mayor Rischel and Supervisor Lawson for their work on both PRTC and VRE's legislative package. It's not easy putting those together, as you saw, especially when you're working with other jurisdictions and other organizations. So I appreciate you all for working on that and really keeping us in the loop as to those updates. Also, just for those who are bus operators and drivers at PRTC, again, we do hear you on the run cuts. We're working with Keolis to get to a place where everyone is comfortable. I do want to thank Keolis for the job they've done so far. I know it hasn't been an easy transition with everything we have going on top of COVID. And so really do appreciate it. And, you know, we will have to all be patient with this process, and we're going to come out of it and everyone's going to be on the even side. So I really just ask that we all continue to work together on this. And with that, I will move into commissioner's time. If you have something, feel free to share. If not, you can say pass. And so Christine, will you please call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone.
Andrea Bailey,
Merry Christmas, happy holiday, everyone.
Kenny Bodie,
Pass. Happy holidays, everyone.
Janine Lawson,
Happy holidays, and Madam Chair, thanks for, I know it's 9:15. Thanks for letting us go back and forth on that legislative item.
It was important, no problem.
Yesley Vega.
Pass.
Is Benny Smith still with us?
I am, of course I am here. Where else would I be?
All right.
No, nothing. Everyone have a joyful and blessed holiday.
Thank you. Tanisha Allen.
No, just to echo what my colleagues have said, I wish everyone a safe and healthy and much needed holiday break. And hopefully 2021 will be a step forward in everything that we do.
Cindy Shelton.
Well said, everyone. Thank you guys, and have a great break.
Pam Sabeski.
Happy holidays. Stay safe, everyone, and stay well.
Ralph Smith. Okay, I guess Mr. Smith isn't with us anymore. Jeanette Rischel.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everyone.
Matt Kelly.
Pass.
Deborah Frazier.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thank you, everyone.
Gary Skinner.
Just have a great holiday season and be safe. Have a good one. Thank you.
Todd Horsley.
I have nothing to add to what's already been said. Just happy holidays.
Lee Carter.
Nothing to add.
And George Barker.
Nothing to add.
Madam Chair, that's the end of commissioner's time.
I actually want to add an agenda item. No, I'm just kidding. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second, Madam Chair.
It's not April 1st.
All right, without objection, we will adjourn. Thank you all.
Good night, all.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.